Good morning, everyone, and welcome to a new episode of ZEFE Today's Opening Bell, or how we call it in Romania, ZEFE Deschiderea de astăzi. Today we're discussing with Peter de Boier. He is the Chief Executive Officer of AGRAR. AGRAR has been in the spotlight this year. Peter, good morning.
Hello, good morning.
Thank you very much for being here with us, Peter. Let's see the financial results. We can discuss about them, and we can discuss about the trends for the rest of this year and for next year. But first of all, let's see. The net profit doubled in the first 9 months. We somehow knew about this trend because we knew the 6 months. How was the third quarter for the AGRAR?
The third quarter was still quite good. Of course, we had some small increases in feed costs due to the unfavorable climate that we had throughout the year. So this year we need to start purchasing food from the market, so there was some additional pressure. But still, the milk price, the European milk price, was still quite record high. So all in all, it was a real good result. We had an 11% increase in milk deliveries. And compared to the first 9 months last year, we had approximately 20% higher milk price than the previous year. So all in all, that is quite good. I think that contributed most to it. Also, we extended, of course, our herd. Our herd increased to 17,000 animals. That was another a milestone. And as well, of course, the main project that we opened this year and finally starts to contribute also to the profitability of the company is the Deschiderea project, where we since March started to milk.
Mm-hmm. Do you see the inflation dragging the sales? Because we are still on a very high curve of inflation, unfortunately, almost 10%. People, do they still buy milk, or they somehow prioritize other stuff?
No, we still, I think first it's good to explain the situation where the AGRAR, the ecosystem where it performs in. Mm-hmm. The AGRAR, generally speaking, is not connected to the Romanian milk price. Our milk price generally is based on an average of 6 Northwestern European countries. So on that inflation part, it's especially if purchasing power, etc., we are not directly affected. Of course, on inputs or spare parts or construction or all these kind of things, we are also affected by inflation and based on our location. The government implemented this price cap for certain dairy products. So, okay, for that, I don't see a huge issue there. And we still see the trend that on the European level, because we are at least in a commodity market, a worldwide market, that milk consumption is growing. And once we look to more to a European level, we see a certain switch. Is that cheese is more and more consumed, and the consumption of milk, just to drink milk, let's say, we see a small decline there on the European level, but on an international level we see a growth in milk consumption, and there mainly is also where the price is based on. But of course, locally, this price cap puts pressure on everyone who invests in animal welfare, who invests in innovation, to produce good quality milk, etc. Of course, this puts pressure already for a longer period on it. And of course, we would like to see inflation go down, although from what probably even better than I do, but from what I read in the media, it's expected that it's remain to a certain level. And of course, the longer this remains, the more pressure it puts. And especially the Romanian milk price is the lowest in all of the EU. So that is good to mention, especially if it is an importing nation.
Mm-hmm. Peter, should the investor expect the same kind of profitability level next year?
No, what we see is we see some pressure on the milk market. And although it is quite surprising, and also the processors were quite surprised, no one was really expecting in this period of the year that we see a decrease in milk price. One of the reasons is the weak dollar. So it's easier for American farmers to export milk because the dollar is in a favorable position compared to the euro, which makes automatically milk produced in Europe more expensive than in the US. So there we see some pressure, as well as we see some extra milk added to the market, mainly due to the fact to blue tongue, anti-mouth and claw disease last year in certain parts of Europe, in Germany and Hungary. There were some cases, Slovakia as well. And we see that there is an increase of cows now calving because they were for a longer time not pregnant, etc., due to the diseases, and that milk is added on the market as well. But everyone expects, for what they can oversee, that this is a short-term disturbance of the market. But no one really knows. But we will not be affected really this year on it. We have still a good milk price in October and November. In December, we will have a decrease in our milk price a bit more sharply. And we expect, at least for Q1 as well, that there remains pressure on the milk market. If we look on the long term, I think for our industry, there are a lot of opportunities. There are a lot of farmers stopping their business in the coming years, mainly due to the fact that they need to implement welfare measurements, etc. And if there is no succession in their family business or whatsoever, it doesn't make sense if you're, for example, a farmer of 55 years old or 50 years old to still implement all these kinds of investments from an economic point of view. So, and for the majority, there is no succession. So we will see in the mid to long term a decrease of milk supply on the European market. And another signal is as well is that a lot of processors or large processors, they really look to consolidate. So we see quite some M&As in the processing market. Friesland Campina did some M&As in Belgium. Arla from Denmark is looking to do some M&As in Germany or mergers. You see these large processors, they start to consolidate to make sure they have sufficient milk supply for their fabrics, etc. So on the long-term perspective, it's good, but we will have some headwind in the coming periods.
Peter, there's an extension, right, for the dairy price cap until spring next year, and I'm keen to see what are your thoughts regarding these, the scenarios, the impact on the business, on the margins.
Yeah, unfortunately, while Romania imports more than 50% of their milk, and even at the added value, for example, of butter, etc., it's even over 60%. Which is seen as problematic, and the government has said many times that they would like to have control over their own food supply, which we completely support because it's important for every country to have control, especially in the unstable world where we are in today, to have at least control over your own food supply. And we try to contribute to this as much as we can. But of course, a price cap doesn't help because it blocks innovation, it blocks growth, it blocks other opportunities, etc., for local farmers, and especially in a market where the Romanian milk price is already the lowest in all of Europe. So you can imagine that it's hard to do in certain investments because it's capex intensive. So this investment at least you do for 15, 20, 30 years, let's say, when you develop a facility. So we announced in June. I think, yeah, we've announced in June our new strategy to 2030. And one of the pillars is there that we will open next year. And finance is more or less approved by the bank for this investment. We will have a shareholders meeting for that, I expect, in January. To have the first processing plant, a processing plant with 150,000 liters of milk, where we will only produce cream and skimmed milk. So we don't want to compete with our clients. So we are not going to produce end products for on the shelf, but we produce skimmed milk and cream. Through that, we lower our transportation costs. And we opened this year to some new market, to Greece and to Northern Italy. And we expect to further increase our exports to those markets. And one of the reasons we are forced, or not forced, but it's a strategic decision, as we see constant this pressure on a price cap and these kind of things, that we started to look to other markets. Of course, the main issue generally are transportation costs. I mean, the milk price is significantly higher in Northern Italy and Greece, but the main issue is the transportation costs. And through this processing plant, as a start of 150,000 liters per day, that is the total production capacity of the Deschiderea farm. We can diversify. So we can diversify based on geography, as well as we could also sell to companies like Unilever and Nestle and other food companies who need, for example, for one of their products that they produce, they need milk with exact, let's say, 1.7% fat or whatsoever. We can deliver that exactly to them. That will optimize their processes. So that is one of the consequences. We looked into other markets, as well as the diversification strategy involves as well that we look into greenhouses and not necessarily only anymore to grow in the milk, let's say.
I looked in the financial report of the AGRAR. It's to be honest, it's greatly written. I think you have a journalist writing the report there because it has a lot of information. What got my attention was the losses, 500 million euros, so 500,000 because of the not updated or outdated references for animals subsidies. I think you call them. Are there any discussions with the government to solve this issue?
No, currently not. So I think it's good to mention is that subsidies are based on a reference date. And if we look to peer countries like Hungary, Bulgaria, and Poland, farmers receive more subsidies, or the subsidies per animal, etc., are higher than in Romania. What it has done is up to a few years ago, the reference date was 2013. So you receive based, that doesn't matter in which year afterwards 2030, but you receive subsidies per animal and the liters produced based on the size of the company in 2013. They recently, 2 years ago, I think they updated 2018, but of course that is still not correct. They are not up to date. But of course, what we generally see also in our financials is that the subsidies, because of the fast and rapid growth of the company, every year they occupy a smaller part of our financial results. But of course, it's problematic that for a large part, and that will grow in the coming period. Now we are still around 60% of the eligible herd that we receive subsidies for, but it will further go down in time to around 50%, which of course, again, is a limitation for farms that grow, that invest in innovation, that deliver larger quantities and contribute to this self-sufficiency of the food supply. And it is a kind of a subsidy for farms that not necessarily grow, who don't invest for grow and don't contribute to a larger extent to this deficit. There aren't any discussions yet. Anyway, a lot of things are quite unclear, especially regarding agricultural subsidies due to the new EU budget. So we expect to have some clearance there next year. Generally, for Eastern Europe, what the Commission is proposing, that looks quite okay. For so far, they have proposed. At least they want to implement a more equal structure on a European level, and normally Romania should benefit from it, as it receives, at least to its peers in Eastern Europe, lower subsidies for milk and for animals. But still, if you want to do it fair and if you want to support the business environment, you should just allocate subsidies to businesses who perform, of course. So let me be clear about that.
Peter, let's see about exports, please. You've started exporting Greece and Northern Ireland, if I remember correctly. What are let's say, the new targets for 2026, and what share in business do you plan for exports?
Yeah, so you said Northern Ireland. Sorry to correct. It's Northern Italy.
Italy, sorry.
Greece, to be clear. No, we don't expect to. We expect to increase to these kind of markets. That is one thing. And what we expect to do is, or what we will try to do, is to diversify our type of clients. What do you mean with that? Is not only milk processors, but also, as I said, as a semiconductor product. Like Unilever, Nestle, food processing companies. You could sell also to large bakeries who need that for their final product. Let's say this substance. So through that, we have a more diversified industry portfolio as well as a geographic portfolio, and through that we try, of course, to prepare. I mean, we are in a huge transformation. I think you could say the largest transformation in the history of the AGRAR, while we are diversifying. The main pillar is the revenue stream for milk. We are diversifying there significantly our client portfolio, where we do the investments for. I mean, the milk the processing plant will be an investment of around 3.5 million euros. And although that sounds small, but it has, at least from a production capacity point of view, it has almost the same capacity as a Friesland Napolac brand has in Romania today. They have close to 200,000. So it's also not that small. But it will significantly improve the AGRAR's negotiation power for the future with its current clients, as well as it gives opportunities when there is certain headwind in certain markets. So that's mainly where we focus on the milk part, and we will still grow, because next year we will also, on the AGRAR in January, there will be also an approval for the loan for the Q2 farm. That will be a loan from 10 million euros, which we aim there will be a 1.5% interest rate plus 1 month Euribor, I think. So also we show in this case that we are still able to negotiate competitive interest rates. And we will start to construct that farm next year, and which will come operational in 2028. So that's another. So we are still growing on the milk part, but of course there are some other investments coming. We opened our compost plant, the first one this year. We are doubling currently capacity from 7,000 tons per year to 14,000 tons. It's almost finalized. The second plant will come operational in December. And in the coming years, we will further increase that to 40,000 tons. So that will, and the head there is really a nice profit margin. So that will be a new revenue stream. The biogas will be a new revenue stream, expecting that will generate incomes from 2028. We are really advancing with the project and with the permitting phase, etc. Of course, there we need the legislation in place. That's the biggest bottleneck so far. That means injection into the grid. But slowly we see some movements there. And of course, to a larger extent, we are currently working on this larger agri-food cluster, which means vegetable production. So that could be tomatoes or paprikas or these kind of things, large tens of hectares of covered crops.
Okay, Straja, you've reached the target 4 months ahead of time, ahead of schedule. My question is, when do you expect to reach the annual target of 200 million liters of milk, if I remember correctly, and what additional investments do you plan to maintain this rhythm?
Yeah, if only for the Straja farm itself, it should be it's 50 million annually when it's fully operational. But okay, in total it's correct, as you're mentioning, with the other farms included. So for the Straja farm, we aim that in the first half year of next year the construction should be finalized, the construction phase, and in 2027 it should produce per day at 150,000 liters of milk, and then it is fully operational. And that milk goes all in that processing plant, as we just discussed. So that's quite advancing well. Now we have 1,900 animals. By the end of the year, we aim to have 2,200 animals, where we estimate at the beginning of the year 1,800 animals, and we will still have a few hundred extra animals before March. Because that's important for the subsidy scheme, because that's how the reference year is calculated. But things are really advancing there.
How comfortable are you with the debt level so far, and do you have any plans for a bond issuance or a capital increase?
Yeah, no, if we look to our current debt ratio, that is debt to equity ratio is 74%. And if you look in the report to the last couple of years, there's a constant decrease of this ratio. Still, we see this currently really as moderate and strategic for the agricultural field of activity, and I think you could also argue that it is a moderate compared to other peers in the agri sector listed on the stock exchange. If we look to our asset structure, it is also balanced. 50% of our assets are financed by equity and 50% by debt. And if we look to the debt to EBITDA ratio, that is now 2.1. And in June, at the end of June, it was 2.27. So it's significantly improving. Next year, as we announce a lot of investments next year, depending a little bit on the year, we could see a small increase there, because we will announce in the coming weeks 3 investments for next year. That is the first wheatgrass plant, which we already announced, but we aim to soon sign a contract and start the implementation phase. So the first wheatgrass plant will be operational also next year. The first processing plant will be operational next year, as well as the Q2 farm. So these are all those 3 projects. They are already approved by our banks. but of course they also need to be approved by our shareholders. But if they will be approved in the shareholders meeting, of course we will. Yeah, we are doing quite some investments next year, but more or less we aim in the coming years that it is around this percentage. Let's say I don't think it will go with the same speed as the last couple of years. We will see with the same speed a decrease of this indicator, but still we are comfortable. And from 2028, etc., I expect that we will take up the pattern again to further lower it. And I think even more comfortable ratio would be around 65 or 60 to 65%.
Peter, let's close on the investment side. You've mentioned your plans, and I have a question noted here. So, which of the projects currently underway, the ones you've mentioned already, and the biomethane plant, the second composting line, and the wheatgrass farm, will have the greatest financial impact over the next 2 years? I've said 2 years. And what is the estimate return on each investment in terms of profitability?
Yeah, so now all three are completely different projects.
Yes.
As far as for the biomethane project, is normally we only do the transportation and we deliver, of course, the feedstock to this plant. So there is barely any investment done. Okay, in some trucks, let's say, what you need to do. So that would be okay. We haven't shared so far publicly what is the return in investment or profitability wise, but okay, if you would say it in periods, we would probably earn it in 1 month, let's say, the investment. To the wheatgrass, I can give it you more or less in years. Let's say if we currently based the initial investment is probably around somewhere between 3 and 4 million euros. And if we look to the rapeseed, currently what we import, etc., it is probably has a return of investment around 3 years, 3 years, I estimate. And then we had, of course, the dairy facility that I find a bit hard to say how fast we will earn it back, especially now because that is still a commodity. But what I can say in a general rule with these kind of projects is that we opt for a maximum return of investment to 4 to 5 years. So I cannot give you there an exact figure as we didn't publish it yet, but we will do this when we have the shareholders meeting. If we look to profitability, let's say which parts will add mostly to profitability, of course, the biomethane project and the compost stations. If implemented well, etc., and our estimations are correct, they will have a significant impact and contribution to the profit, and that should be seen in 2027, 2028.
Okay, thank you very much, Peter, for the explanations and for taking your time. And congratulations on your results. We've seen how it reflected on the market already, and a speed recovery for you.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it was great again to be on your show. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you. Same. And I'll switch to Romanian for the closing remarks. Mulțumim tare mult că ne-ați urmărit. Fie întâlniri la Investiții Câștigătoare.